Let's take a minute to talk about Damian Lillard and his comments about the obsession with ring culture in the NBA. I will be the first one to admit that you can very well be a legendary player with a fantastic legacy and have never won a championship. Think of players like Allen Iverson and Charles Barkley, Steve Nash, Patrick Ewing, Dikembe Mutombo. And if we want to look at players who are currently in the league, Chris Paul, James Harden, and even Damian Lillard, who is the subject of this particular podcast. And if we are being brutally honest, some of the most celebrated players in the world, your Michael Jordans and your Magic Johnsons and your Kobes and your LeBrons, are celebrated because of how exciting it was to watch them go up against some of those great players that I just named and many others that we could list who went pretty far in the postseason, who had exemplary careers, who are revered and respected as legendary Hall of Fame basketball players, but never won a championship. And yes, there are more important things than basketball, and it's very important that in spite of all of the amazing things that you can accomplish as a great athlete, that you still have something outside of the game that gives you joy and gives your life meaning. You do not need to win a championship as a basketball player in order to be celebrated or to live a meaningful life. But there is something that I feel needs to be said. And that's that players like Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal and even James Harden before he got to Philadelphia at one time were electing to take the money over the opportunity to win. Do not get me wrong. The Portland Trail Blazers are a fantastic above average team, but if someone like myself can figure out that the Trailblazers are not a top contender analytically for a championship, then guaranteed folks like Damian Lillard, who I am going to make a huge assumption here is way more intelligent than me about basketball and is living it every day, and the other people in the front office, they know that too. They know that they are likely to hit that same ceiling that they continue to hit every year after year with Damian Lillard as their franchise player without having made a significant move to add someone to help him. And that doesn't have as much to do with him as it has to do with some of the other teams in the league who are consistently the likely favorites to win it all. And here I'm talking about your Golden State Warriors and your Boston Celtics and your Milwaukee Bucks. And yes, I know the Boston Celtics have not won a championship, but they are still in the conversation, and people don't look at you like you're crazy when you say it's possible that they could win a championship. And yes, again, it is possible, and by possible, I mean within the infinite realm of possibility that the Portland Trailblazers could win a championship, but analytically, and based on the season that they've had so far, it's also just as possible that they might not even make it into the play-in tournament. And as it stands, when we're speaking at this very moment, they're not even in the top 10. So a lot of Damian Lillard's conversation around this focus on winning a championship has to do with the fact that he knows that given the level of talent that we can all see with our own eyes that he has, and the fact that he is compensated more generously than players who are very likely to be in the conversation once we start discussing finals matchups, it's a little bit of a disappointment or letdown for fans of basketball when we assess Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers' success within the context of a single season or even within the context of his entire career. Is it fair that we expect a player who's compensated more generously than over 98% of the league to be in the conversation once we hit the postseason? My answer to this question is a resounding yes and a subtle no. Let me explain my subtle no comes from the fact that there are a lot of things that you can't account for in a single season that could prevent someone from making it really far in the postseason that are completely out of any one person's control. We know that injuries impact players. They are human beings with lives outside of basketball, and personal things come up that are very serious, that are way more important than basketball, that could prevent them from playing out a full season. And there are a variety of factors that contribute to players and teams who we expect to see well into June not making it. And we can't hold any one person responsible, regardless of how talented they are or how well they're being compensated. But the resounding yes comes from my belief and opinion that if you want to be talked about in the conversation when we are discussing the greatest basketball players that are in the league, it's impossible for us to assess everyone fairly without looking at how successful those individuals have been when it really counts, which is in the playoffs and in the postseason. We all know that the postseason is where legends are made. We celebrate players that make it into the postseason but don't win a championship, because when you have skill that's undeniable and you do things that are amazing on the basketball court, and you give some of those players that do end up winning a really large hurdle to overcome in order to actually get that championship, you deserve your respect. And it does not take anything away from what everyone can again see clearly with their own two eyes that you can do with the basketball. But if you don't win, then it creates this separation within that conversation between those players that have been able to win, especially those that win 1, 2, 3, 4 chips, and players that unfortunately have not won a championship. Those players do have an asterisk next to their legacy. And we can't deny that they may be one of the greatest players to play in their own era, but we all know that the ones that get celebrated the most are the ones who establish their dominance, not only as an individual basketball player, but also as a leader and as a player whose play can elevate their team to a place that everyone is reaching for. And we really don't have to look very far to see how that plays out in retirement. Look at Reggie Miller, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing. These men are respected for what they achieved as ball players and as men, but we certainly don't look at their legacy the same way we do Magic Johnson or Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or Bill Russell. And again, if you want to use current players, Stephen Curry and LeBron James. Players who win championships are elevated into a completely different stratosphere than players who are amazing but were never able to do it. And the fact of the matter is that Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal, who are entirely deserving of every penny that they get compensated to play the game of basketball, and I'm saying this to double down on the fact that I have said on multiple occasions on this channel that I am not against someone getting that big check. Who are we to say that these gentlemen don't deserve what they're getting or that they should not be getting paid more than Steph or more than LeBron? That's frankly irrelevant. If they have the intelligence and the opportunity to hire someone who can get them that money, then so be it. That's the business side of it, and that has not as much to do with basketball. But where that part of it comes into the conversation around basketball is when you are being held accountable by fans who do compare you to your peers, and you want them to compare you to the best people in the conversation around who's the best player in basketball, who are the top 10 and the top 15, who's getting selected to play in the All-Star game. Because at the end of the day, this is a competitive sport, and we assume as fans that when you receive that level of compensation, it's because your team believes that you are going to be that guy that takes them to the promised land. And when you don't, you're going to face a level of scrutiny, and people are going to analyze why. And if year after year you hit the same ceiling, you get the same result, then that is what your reputation becomes. And no matter how much you were able to do as an individual basketball player, that's always going to be part of the way that your story is written as a ball player. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. There's no getting around that. And that, unfortunately, is the truth. It's part of your story. So Damian Lillard's assessment of our obsession with ring culture is definitely a fitting critique of how we can sometimes undermine or belittle the amount of work that goes into getting the productivity and the output that we see when we see him at his best. And I'm not going to disrespect him because there's too much evidence that not only is he an amazing basketball player, but he's also a philanthropic guy who wants to set a good example for other people that look up to him. And that's no small feat and comes with its own set of responsibilities and challenges. So he gets my respect, but I feel like if his team was doing better and they were in that conversation, he wouldn't have even made that comment. People are critiquing him fairly because he is one of the best players in the league. And the way this team is built, it's clear that there's a belief in him that he's going to be the Kobe for them or the LeBron for this team that elevates them to that next level. And we just haven't seen that. And we're not even really seeing it in the regular season, which, like I said, is not all his fault. And we're not going to sit here and say that there aren't other extenuating circumstances that have led to this outcome. But you're going to get criticized for that. And to be frank, as much as I love all these players and I have so much fun watching them, I think it's fair criticism. Anyway, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to my podcast. Please do not forget to subscribe to my channel and comment whether you agree with me or not. I'm out.